Who performed the best on stage in Milwaukee and who faded? Joining us right now is the Wall Street Journal's Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Matt Murray. Matt, good to see you.
Good to see you, Maria.
So give me your observations. I mean, we really loved partnering with the Journal. I think together we had some terrific and substantial questions, and we solicited the right information that I know our viewers wanted to know. Who did it the best?
Well, Rubio did very, very well, I think, in terms of presenting himself and having a story about who he is and why he's running. If you listen to him, he talks about the 21st century. He talked about families. He's always comes out very strong. I thought Ted Cruz did well for where he's coming from. Yeah. I think he had the one stumble where he forgot the fifth agency, but he's joked about it well. He's covered up. He's a very forceful on immigration. I really think almost everybody did well for what they wanted to do, with the possible exception of Governor Kasich. I think that he got a little caught up on a few of his answers and may not have done himself much help up there.
And when you look at the undercard debate, what was your takeaway there? I thought Chris Christie came out swinging in that undercard debate. So if you look at the overall two debates, who else?
Look, I think Christie was the clear star of the undercard debate. I think Jindal came out with a strategy to attack Christie and define a certain kind of conservatism, which might be the best strategy Bobby Jindal has right now. I just think it's a hard sell for him to do. Christie was really focused on the other candidates, on Hillary Clinton again and again. He looked at the camera every time. He was very strong and ready. I mean, he really, in some ways, he might have benefited from being on the undercard, assuming he can get up to the top card next time.
All right, so we're talking about Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Chris Christie really coming out and lifting themselves as a result of this most recent debate.
Yeah.
What happens now? I mean, they head to Iowa. I mean, and now the campaigns continue. We've got another debate in December.
Yeah.
What do you think the next month looks like for these guys?
Well, I do think it looks a lot like recent weeks. I don't think any of them are ready to drop out yet. I don't think there's any particular impetus. I don't think anybody did so badly they have to go. What I do think was really successful, what you all did a great job in the debate though, was driving the conversation more toward policy. So even though we're talking about how they're doing as performers and how each of them did, you have a much better sense with each of them where they stand, and you can see where the party's going. You know, I mean, if you really think about things like tax policy and regulation, there wasn't that much disagreement really among them, and the party's going in a pretty conservative direction on those things.
Right.
Other areas like immigration, though, you brought out the divides very, very well. You really could see that voters have a big choice to make in where they want to go.
Which is what people really wanted. I was astounded at how many chairmen and CEOs and managers of businesses wrote to me saying, thank you. Yeah. I have a better idea of the differences and distinguishing amongst these candidates. Yeah. What about Rubio calling Vladimir Putin a gangster? Interesting. It's not anything that we haven't heard before. Let's listen to this.
First of all, Vladimir Putin doesn't take that as an insult. He said 60 Minutes, when they asked him that specific question, they told him that Marco Rubio had called him a gangster. He smiled and said, how can I be a gangster? I'm in the KGB.
and by the way, he did say that. I mean, so that's how he sees himself, I guess.
Look, Rubio as the master of the soundbite on that stage every time, I think. And I think it's going to help him. I think he looks like a candidate who says what the real facts are and isn't, gilding the lily in any way. So I think it's fine. Let's
talk about immigration for a second, because as you noted a moment ago, this is where the differences were. The Gang of Eight and the bill there, Rubio has been criticized in terms of support, not support of that bill. What did you take away from his commentary on immigration? Probably, I think people wanted a little more on that from Rubio.
I think he's in a slightly sticky situation when it comes to immigration. Look, there were two moments where he actually really, was a little bit on his heels. Immigration was one. Another one was when Rand Paul went at him about his tax credits for children, too, and tried to define him as not a true conservative in the conservative sense. I think those are both manageable for Rubio, but you could see that people were starting to hone in on him as possibly the emerging front runner, and he's going to get a lot more of that.
Yeah, and then John Kasich and Donald Trump had a heated interaction about immigration. Listen to this, let you get your comment about it.
Come on, folks. We all know you can't pick them up and ship them back across the border. It's a silly argument. It's not an adult argument. It makes no sense.
All I can say is you're lucky in Ohio that you struck oil. That's for one thing. Dwight Eisenhower. You don't get nicer. You don't get friendlier. They moved 1.5 million people out. We have no choice.
Trump basically doubling down, saying those, the illegals are going, the deportation is happening. What do you think about that plan?
Is it realistic? I think that's a big question for everybody.
Look, Kasich made a good point.
I think Kasich may have spoken to the head, though, and Trump is speaking to the heart. I mean, there's no question that Trump's immigration policy has been a driver for him and a driver throughout the entire campaign that they all have to react to. So in some ways, Kasich might have been expressing what some other candidates are thinking but not saying. But I'm not sure that it really appeals deeply to the heart for primary voters at this point in time. I thought Cruz did very well on immigration, too, when he picked up the baton. And, of course, speaking from his experience, he has a different kind of authority than Donald Trump on it.
In terms of jobs and wages, and of course these are the issues that are most important to voters, who do you think articulated the best plan? I mean, the ideologies are very similar. They want smaller regulation. They want lower taxes, smaller government. But did anybody stand out in terms of the economic plan and jobs creation?
Well, look, I think that two things about that. One that stood out to me was that the whole party, really, you can see the whole party has moved in a direction where there's a lot of talk about peeling back regulation. There's a lot of talk about lower taxes, simpler tax rates. You think back to '96 when Steve Forbes financed his own campaign and talked about the flat tax, and everybody thought that was really an out there fringe idea. Variations of that are rippling through all the campaigns now. So whoever, if we have a Republican president next, the first job of that president is going to be a real simplification of the tax code. I mean, you have several candidates calling for getting rid of the IRS, which is remarkable itself. Regulation also big. I thought Jeb Bush's strongest moment probably was when he was talking about rolling back regulation, and they all wanted to roll back regulation heavily. In terms of who did well, that was the first question of the night, was the minimum wage.
That's right.
Trump and Carson both probably had a little more negative take on it, and then Rubio came and he sort of took what they said and formulated it in a more positive, assertive way, which he's very, very good at doing. So I thought he crystallized it in the best way. I mean, it's a tricky argument because you can make a great economic case for not raising the minimum wage, but there might be a lot of people in the base out there hearing that who think, well, but, where's mine? Right. And that's the challenge they've got. Well,
one issue on tax reform is, are we going to get it the first year? I mean, that was why I specifically asked the candidates, look, this is a critical point for Republican voters, and they want this on the agenda. How can you guarantee this will happen in your first term? That's an aggressive, goal to have this happen in your first term, but this is going to be top of the agenda for these guys.
I don't see how it can't be. I mean,
exactly.
Especially because I think that part of what Republicans especially are feeling, even more than Democrats, is a lot of frustration in the base at people who have made promises and not delivered. So there's so much talk about it, somebody's going to have to deliver.
All right, let's